renowned. So let me repeat, he's a renowned movement builder and advocate for social justice, peace, and environmental sustainability. He holds voluntary leadership positions with several regional and international organizations, and works full-time as the founding executive director of the African Artist Peace Initiative, the biggest movement of creatives and cultural diplomats in Africa, with 33 country teams. He currently chairs the advisory boards of African Union Youth Program, Youth Network, and the African Youth Initiative on Climate Change. He was former chairperson of the Gambian National Youth Council, African Youth Panel, Copyright Collecting Society of the Gambia, Pan-African Climate Change Alliance, Gambian Chapter in Africa, 2.0 Foundation, Gambia Chapter. He has facilitated and was involved in several youth-led processes at the African Union, United Nations, and other international organizations. As a youth development expert, he was nominated in 2012 by Youth Help Africa, an online platform for youth engagement in Africa, has one of the 12 most influential youth leaders in Africa. Ibrahim Cissé is a campaigner and strong advocate of the Africa Agenda 2063 and the NNSDG, a former steering committee member of the Gender in My Agenda campaign and founding board member of African Rising Movement. He is the founder of Children and Community Initiative for Development and Mandigori Foundation for Performing Arts based in Gambia. He was awarded the Personality of Year 2013 in Gambia and won the Youth Leader of the Year Award 2013 for his outstanding work and contribution to youth empowerment and development in the Gambia and Africa. He won the Best Indigenous Film at the Nollywood and African Film Critics Award 2013 in Washington, D.C. for his film, The Hands of Fates, and the story based on female genital mutilation, child marriage, and girls' education. His last film, Sarata, is aimed at raising awareness on cervical cancer. He was awarded the Youth Advocacy and Nation Building in the 2017 Pan-African Humanitarian Summits and awards in Tanzania. He was recognized as one of the most influential youth person in West Africa and Africa by the Confederation of West African Youth and African Youth Award, respectively. Ibrahim Cissé co-founded and coordinated the new Gambian Global Movement for Democracy and Justice and played a key role in mobilizing youth, artists, civil society, and the media in restoring democracy and rule of law in the Gambia, December 2016. So that's the bio of our first panelist. So is our second panelist here? This is Andrew. Is Andrew here? So let me go on with.
He is.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay, so welcome to the webinar. So let me introduce Andrew to you. Andrew Wenda is a professional journalist, founding managing director of the Independent Publications Limited, the publisher of the Independent New Magazines, East Africa's leading current affairs new magazine. He is actively involved in public policy debates, and because of this, he featured on many international TV stations like CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera, providing analysis of current affairs. He is always seeking to learn what is possible. So in short, this is what we can say about our panelists. So I'm gonna, give the floor to our founding presidents to continue with the webinar.
Thank you, Osman. Pleasure to see everyone here. And our guests, Mr. Andrew and Mr. Cassie Ibrahim. So you are welcome. And our audience. Today we have a very big topic. I would like to ask our panelists to put their videos on, and we can kickstart. I don't see their faces yet. Mr. Ibrahim, at least I saw Andrew. Okay, we'll kickstart. So welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to host you, Andrew Mwenda. It's our second pleasure to have you on the floor and on our webinar and the platforms. Thank you for the belief in young people. And Mr. Ibrahim, yeah, I guess I request you to put on your video. Let's we'll see each other's face. And yeah, so today we have a very important topic. I'm actually very excited about it. And as we've been introduced by our moderator about the panelists, their biographies, they have taken a deep dive in security matters and youth organization, and also they know our region very well. But to kickstart, we're going to focus on Africa. And Africa has been a victim of geopolitics, both generated within, but also outside of our continent. And so I will start with a simple answer. What is strategic peace and what is strategic security? Because our topic says today, positioning Africa in achieving strategic peace and strategic peace and security. What is strategic peace? If I may start with you, Andrew.
Well, perhaps we should begin by trying to understand three things: what we would call tactical, if it was tactical peace, what is strategic peace, and what is existential peace. Then we'll be able to understand what we are talking about. Or let me say, instead of peace, use the word security. Strategic security is the establishment of an umbrella to secure a country in terms of its well-being, whether that is in military, economic, and political terms.
Yes.
To put in place infrastructure that can ensure that a country is able to sustain both political and economic independence by building particular economic and military capabilities to defend that independence. That really is strategic security.
Yeah, very good. Now, how about Ms. Ibrahim? Are you here? Do you hear us? Okay, we've had issues with Ethiopian kind of network, but it's okay. We'll go ahead with that. And so, like, really defining very well how does African being a victim of geopolitics? How has, first of all, we're gonna begin with what is the geopolitical space and geopolitics? How has Africa been a victim of geopolitics? But how has it created more insecurities in Africa?
Is that addressed to me?
Yes.
So when we talk of geopolitics, it refers to how the geographic location of a particular country influences its political relations. Let me give you an example. Uganda is located at the heart of East Africa. To the north of Uganda is South Sudan. To the west of Uganda is DRC. And beyond South Sudan and DRC, Central African Republic. Then to the east, of course, is Kenya. Beyond Kenya, there is Somalia. Then we have Rwanda and Burundi and Tanzania. Just look at that map alone in terms of what geopolitics would mean. So we are located in a very dangerous neighborhood. South Sudan, Burundi, and the DRC, which are, let me say, Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan, right now as we speak, are what you would say failing states. Then Burundi is also a failing state. And beyond, you have two other failed states in Somalia and Central African Republic. So our geographical location in this region imposes upon us a particular form of politics. Congo is a country that is very rich in minerals, and the interest of the big powers to have a foothold in Congo because of its rich minerals and the strategic position in Central Africa occupying such a huge space. If you look at Somalia, it creates serious problems in terms of shipping through the Gulf of Aden, where most of a significant share of global trade passes through the Suez Canal, the Gulf of Aden to Asia from Europe. Then, of course, you look at South Sudan, the politics of Khartoum, which previously was labeled a government that is sponsoring Islamic extremism and terrorism. Uganda therefore had to play a role in the weakening of Sudan through the creation of South Sudan. And of course, as you can see, beyond the Central African Republic, which is unstable. The biggest interest, of course, of the international powers, especially the Americans in this region, is to contain the spread of terrorism, largely Islamic extremism, sponsored by Islamic extremism. And therefore, our geopolitics is how this geography, our location in a particular geographic space, impacts our politics and then global power politics.
Wonderful. But someone may ask themselves, how is the problem outside geopolitics, or the problem is internal within the region you've explained? How does it play to the insecurity?
It is, I think, an interaction of the two. For example, because of Congo's vast mineral wealth, its vast timber resources, and also because of its size and geographic location at the heart of Africa, it tends to attract a lot of interests of the big powers of the world to ensure that they have a foothold there and they have some control over its politics. But also internally, Congo has many fragilities. One, it is a very vast country with a very small population, making it very difficult to broadcast power across its geographic space. One of the reasons why you have an absentee state in many parts of the Congo is that it has not had an opportunity to build state infrastructure, and state infrastructure is very expensive in Congo. You know, the ability to build an effective state also has something to do with the relationship between your geographic size and the nature of your population. If you have a highly dispersed population, it means to move electricity from one area to another is you're building power lines or a road or a railway across thousands of kilometers of road which are sparsely populated. Your return on investment will be very low. Even to build administrative infrastructure, whether to collect taxes, to ensure peace, becomes very difficult. So Congo has internal fragilities, but also internal endowments, internal fragilities that make it difficult to construct, structural difficulties that make it difficult to construct a viable state, but it also has internal endowments that attract the interference of big powers, and the big powers, even neighboring powers, interfere in Congo in the context of its internal weaknesses, and therefore the two interact to even weaken the state, the evolution of an effective state in Congo more. There is the third, of course, incentive that in Congo, you have a lot of rich minerals. Just assume if we began a rebellion right now in Congo, the incentive structure created by the availability of rich minerals is that any rebellion you begin, like you said, the NRA in Uganda, the RPF in Rwanda, and now you look at the RCD previously in the Congo, is that you have very many people joining you in a rebel group. Now, if there are no rich minerals, there is no foreign power back rolling the movement, it means that the people joining you will tend to be those with high commitment to the political objectives of the movement. But when you have rich minerals, you are likely to see people who are interested in grabbing a gold mine in Bujumai, a diamond mine in Butembo, coming and crowding out high commitment individuals. But these will be opportunists seeking a quick payoff in form of a rich mineral. So what happens is that whenever you begin a political movement in Congo, the opportunists seeking a quick payoff from rich minerals tend to crowd high commitment individuals from the movement. And therefore, Congolese politics, because of those structural imperatives, tends to have very high levels of political opportunism. Now, if you look at Uganda, when Museveni was in Luweero, it was not clear that these guys would win. There were no rich minerals from which they could get money. There was no foreign power that was bankrolling the movement, this struggle. And therefore, for you to join and stay there in those conditions required you to have very high levels of commitment to the political objectives and military objectives of this organization. So the selection process tended to encourage high commitment individuals whom we would call investors and to crowd out low commitment individuals or opportunists who are looking for a quick payoff. There was no quick payoff. And I think that the incentive structure, therefore, in Congo, both internal and external, tends to accentuate. The two interact to accentuate state fragility, leading to both strategic insecurity and instability.
Oh, very good. Like you said, the two play in between. And I think if we have more internal organization, the internal capacity, we can at least handle the internal pressure. May not be that much worse. So we have another panelist, Ibrahim. Do you hear us? Ibrahim? We'll go ahead. I think he has a network issue. And now we see like the problem of geopolitics playing in security can be internal and external. So how do we combat this as an African state? How do we move forward? And I'll bring this, that there's this animal called peace building initiative.
Good morning.
And to what extent has it been most peace initiatives in Congo, either in Congo, even in other parts of South Sudan, Somalia, and other security fragile places? How has it been? Why is that insecurity keeps on going? What's the problem?
You see, I do not believe in many, not all, but let me say many of these peace building initiatives, because they tend to address the issue of peace and security as a technical fix rather than as a form of political struggle. I am also dissatisfied even with the democracy promotion movement in Africa by quote unquote civil society organizations. Let me begin with these democracy building initiatives that are driven by civil society organizations. What do we understand by civil society historically? Civil society as a concept emerged in the West as that space, a kind of associational life of citizens outside of the economy and the state through, say, free publicity, free association to aggregate particular interests within society and place them on the national political agenda. So people with a shared interest would come together around, would come voluntarily together around that shared interest and use that organization, build an organization, elect its leadership, raise money through subscription and membership fees, fund the organization, and use this organization to aggregate the interests and place them on the national or regional political agenda. You get? So from the very get-go, these institutions had democratic character in the sense that the beneficiaries of the activities of the civil society organization, whether it was for peace, whether it was for wages, whether it was for prices, whatever they were seeking through this organization, the demand emerged from the population who formed an association, funded the association, elected the leadership of the association, and if the leadership did not serve the role it was elected to serve, at the next annual general meeting, they could be voted out. So the democratic character of the state in the West was shaped by the democratic character of the building blocks, which were civil society. Now, let me come to the nature of the civil society we have in Africa, largely foreign-funded NGOs. The people who benefit from the activity of an NGO in Uganda or in Kenya or Tanzania are not members of that NGO. Therefore, they don't elect the leadership of the NGO. I, Andrew Mwenda, and my friends, we form an NGO. We go to Brussels, London, and Paris, and Washington, D.C., raise money from foreigners. But for us to raise money, remember, these foreigners have their own interest or they have their own ideas that they want to sponsor. These ideas may not necessarily be the interests of my community. So they give us, we write a proposal to suit their needs and what they're willing to fund rather than what we want.
Yeah.
Step one, the linkage between what the people want and what the Western powers want. These people have idealistic, abstract desires that may be fitting to their society, but may be irrelevant to ours, or may not be appropriate to our situation. So I come with my NGO, I begin funding a peace building initiative. But you look, the beneficiaries of my NGO are not members. What they're receiving from my NGO are not rights, they're just receiving charity. They can't hold me to account. They can't elect me out. In any case, I do accountability, which is financial accountability to my masters in the Western world. And for them, they receive charity, and there is no beggar who has rights to defend and dictate how things work. So now we come to the issue of peace building initiatives. Who are you who is building these peace building initiatives? Because in the peace building initiatives, you will find yourself required to make certain concessions, to give certain concessions, to make such compromises as demanded by the reality. But our typical civil society organization promoting peace building initiatives in Uganda has a technical solution to a problem that is really peculiar to Uganda. And because they are foreign funded and they want to please the international funders, they may take hardline positions. They may take what I would call idealistic positions that may not respond to the reality on the ground. And therefore, the peace building initiative becomes an avenue where you promote hardline positions of an idealistic nature that resist the very essence of democratic negotiation and compromise that forms the foundation of democratic politics, that actually provides the right solution to peace building initiatives. So you find that our problems, yes, are local. The demands to solve them are locally generated sometimes, but when it comes to designing a solution to solve these problems, we retreat to a textbook theory published in a book at Harvard or Stanford, Oxford or Cambridge, which is explaining the experience of Europe. So the persistent problem of peace building in Africa is this mismatch between demands and solutions. The demands, yes, may be largely local, but the solutions are alien and don't relate to the context. And that is the structural template upon which failure is constructed.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what I hear from your tone and reviews is that we are diagnosing things to a wrong medicine, giving it to wrong. So we are diagnosing structural political fallacies, or in the West, or what we call idealistic, to an African context, which does not suit the realities on the ground. But let's move on from civil society. Now let's move to security. You've seen a lot of
just one second.
Yeah.
Yes, please go on.
Okay, you've seen. Let's move now to security, which is one of biggest cornerstone of promoting peace building in Africa. You've seen a lot of peace building forces, countries sending peacekeeping missions in Somalia, in the Central African Republic, in South Sudan, in many parts of the continent. But at the same time, we have seen no change or little change or progress made in those countries. How do you explain that? Is it an African objective or a foreign-backed objective?
I think that the biggest, first of all, if you look at statistical indices, say from 1950 to the year 2010, that is 60 years, and you look at let me structure the argument this way. First, conflicts tend to end, in most cases, when one side secures a decisive military victory, or when both sides are totally exhausted by war and they realize that mutual accommodation is more profitable than further combat. I think I have seen a study done by a guy called James Ferron. He's a professor at Stanford University, studying civil wars that took place in the world between 1955 and 2005. That's a period of 50 years. And he found that wars tended to end when there were in 85% or 90% of the cases where there was a decisive military victory by one side. And it is only in 12% of the cases where there was a United Nations peacekeeping mission that the peace was secured. So you find that the peacekeeping tends to prolong the conflict. And you can understand why from the incentive structure, because when foreigners come in to enforce this peace, the belligerents may look at the peace, the ceasefire as an opportunity to mobilize, recuperate, rearm, train more in order to launch a new struggle. That is why there is only a 12% success rate of peacekeeping. It's rare for peacekeeping efforts to generate the kind of peace and stability that you're looking for. So whether you look at Rwanda, you look at Uganda, you look at Ethiopia, you look at Eritrea, you look at South Sudan, there has been a decisive military victory by one side, and the emerging side, once it comes to power, it has what they would call, it is able to mount relatively unified action to promote the agenda it was fighting for at its own terms. And one of the problems we confront in Africa is we have too much external interference in our affairs. It's so difficult because you have all these people coming from Europe. They have ideas in their mind that may not be connected to the reality on the ground. They are not willing, they want to impose a theory on a reality, and the theory is based on the experience of Europe or North America. It may not relate to the local situation. Let me give you an example. When the NRM won a military victory in 1986, Museveni could not have stabilized Uganda. What did he do? Recognizing the local situation, he allowed the defeated arm of UNLA to be integrated into the UNLA. Just imagine you said, this is an army that committed mass murder, we shall pursue all of them and jail them. This can would have gone into chaos. He recognized that to build a political base, he needed to appeal to invite the DP, UPC, and so many other political players in a broad-based government in order to achieve a minimum political agenda on which peace could be constructed. But this requires that the actors are responding not to a theory in a textbook, they are responding to the reality on the ground and are willing to make concessions and compromises that are necessary to build a stable peace.
Absolutely. So even what I hear from you, even the military machine, which is the soldiers' military, we need, as an African, we need to build an army that is ideologically very clear and is strong enough to counter the geopolitical forces that might want to interfere in. Do you see that as a reality coming in, or some fantasy?
Well, I think that Uganda, for example, has been very successful in building an army really based on local realities. There has been some external interference, but I think given the way NRM is constructed and the UPDF, they have resisted too much external influence on the management of the security situation. They have conceded a lot of ground on the management of the economy. And I think Uganda's one of the reasons why Uganda's economy is largely foreign owned. All banks are owned by foreigners. You have manufacturing entities, telecommunications. The commanding heads of the economy are owned by foreigners. In the security space, Uganda fought very hard to sustain this kind of independence. And one of the reasons why we have been successful internally, and now we are able even to project military force inside Congo, in South Sudan, in Central African Republic, in Somalia, is because we really have an indigenous military machine whose doctrine, whose training, whose structures, and whose attitude is really largely shaped by the local situation. Of course, we have borrowed a lot from China, we have borrowed from the United States, from the UK, from South Africa, from Egypt, from other countries who have trained, but that is to enrich who we are rather than to create us as how we are. If you ask me about Uganda's economy, I will tell you that Uganda's economy is just largely a textbook economy borrowing from abroad. That's why many Ugandans feel frustrated it does not serve them. But Uganda's military is very, very locally constructed and designed. Sure. And the political structure also has a lot of copy and paste challenges, and that constrains one of the reasons why elections tend to be violent is because we have been induced by donors to accept Western pressures, to accept things that may be good for them but are not good for us.
Yes, absolutely. That comes to the recent massive floods of coups in West Africa, and many just recently Ethiopia was in a chaos, in war, Mozambique in war, in many places in Africa. What do you think are the internal cardinal factors that have really facilitated these wars? Before we look at the external.
First of all, I think that in the cases of countries like Mali, countries like Guinea, countries like Niger and Burkina Faso, the state is fragile across most of Africa, but there is state fragility internally. The state is fragile. The state is fragile, first of all, because there are two things. The state in most of our countries is overdeveloped in functions, but it is underdeveloped in capacity. And by capacity, I mean both financial and human capacity, human resource capacity. So it's rich, goes far beyond its capacity. I mean, just even look at Uganda. What are our expectations of our government? We wanted to deliver broad-based healthcare. We wanted to deliver education for everybody. We wanted to build a tarmac road in every village. We wanted perhaps to feed sausages in schools. But Uganda is a very poor country. Average expenditure per person is just $200. How much can you do per year? If you get Uganda's total budget of about $8 billion and divide it by a population of 40 million or 42 million people, you get what we call public spending per capita of $200. So our expectations as citizens, but also the attitude of our leaders, is that somehow the state must provide everything. But the state is so poor, it doesn't have these resources, whether they're human or financial. And therefore, by spreading our resources so thinly across so wide a space, we dilute our ability to deliver. That is the biggest source of fragility, if I will tell you. One is the expectations that have constructed the legitimacy of the state to be the deliverer of public goods and services to every citizen. This is water, electricity, education, health, practically name 500 things. At the same time, the public expectations are that the state is able to do this regardless of its resources. So the state is spread thin and becomes fragile. Once it is fragile, then there are external pressures that come. In the case of North Africa, is that you had the removal of Gaddafi in Libya. When Gaddafi was removed, he opened all the armories. People grabbed all these guns, and the guns spread in the whole of the Sahel region. So everybody got a gun, and therefore, and because they have easy access to firearms, rebel movements there started proliferating. The collapse of the Libyan state opened the floodgates of guns, and these guns became opportunities for political and military entrepreneurs to seek power in the West.
If I may interrupt you, Andrew, you said too much expectation of citizens from the state. How do we change that mindset? I
don't know. I really don't know. Let me give you an example, my friends. I feel even when I listen to Ugandans, your country is just so poor. You're asking for what it can't do. Even if nurses in hospitals and doctors starved themselves to death, government officials starved themselves to death, but did not steal 1 shilling, I can tell you Uganda cannot deliver healthcare to everybody. It just doesn't have that money. You just go to hospital today and tell me how much I will charge you. You're likely to get a doctor's consultation at 80,000. By the time you leave, you have paid 150,000. That is one visitation. But remember that Uganda's expenditure on health is about $15 per person per year. $15 is how much? Is maybe 50,000 shillings. But that is one doctor's consultation. So how can Uganda ever afford this healthcare that we demand? So the problem that our countries face, therefore, is that because of exaggerated expectations of the population, the government tries to do too much on a string budget, and that leads to serious fragility. The state is weakened by that. It's weakened, let me say, spiritually or ideologically by these expectations. It is weakened by resources, it's weak because of its own resources. But remember, there are two types of resources. One is financial, but the other is human. A nurse in Uganda or a doctor, his qualifications will be very low because of our poverty. It's unlikely that you can find the best doctors in the world being in Uganda. Will be in New York. They will be in countries where they can earn the most. In fact, the best Ugandan doctors always leave and go for greener pastures because the rest of the world is willing to pay them top dollar, which we can't afford. So I think that we are not cognizant of our reality. We demand much more than can be, that is possible. And those expectations put too much pressure on the state and lead to fragility. If you ask me, one of the reasons that it's difficult to construct peace here is a mismatch between our resources and our expectations.
Yes, I agree with you. But we all know also that the state has a role to play, organizing their craft in managing all those. Let me bring in Ibrahim. Ibrahim, you there now? You can hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Greetings.
Okay, wonderful. I don't know whether you've been following or not. We're in deep security matters here. What's your take on what are some internal factors that have really contributed to insecurities in Africa? Internal factors, before even going to external.
Thank you very much. Let me start by greeting everybody in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful, for giving us this opportunity to interact and to talk about this very important issue. My name is Ibrahim Cisse. I'm the chief servant of the African Artists Peace Initiative, which is actually a movement using the creative force of arts, culture, and creative communication to champion the issues of peace, security, and social justice in Africa. And now coming to your question, I would say in the African society, Africa is a continent of extreme wealth and extreme poverty. But the young people, the generation that we are in right now, which is a life generation that believe in turning challenges into opportunities. I would say that our culture provides the opportunity for peaceful transition of activities, but more importantly, conflict resolution. So in answering your question directly, I would say one of the key issues is mindset. So we need to start changing the mindset in African societies. And the best way to change mindset is to take us back to who we were before, and that is our African self, our real self, which is our nature. And to do that, we need education for peace. And education for peace has to look into the issues of indigenous knowledge. Colleagues, we know that in African societies, one of the best ways to solve issues of conflict is using indigenous knowledge, indigenous sciences, and indigenous wisdom. So we've forgotten that, we've put that aside, and that is the reason why insecurity is rampant in Africa. So the best way to go about that is reset of mindset, using culture, our heritage, and our arts to remind us of who we are, because we are originally a very peaceful people. So that would be my contribution to that.
Okay, I like that perspective, using culture and arts to bring about peace. But then, how do you orient this mindset that has been disturbed for a long time? What are the practical ways do we position really Africa to move to achieving strategic peace and security? What are practical ways should we involve in? And what's the role of young people in harnessing this noble movement, if I might call it?
Thank you very much. So the first thing I will say, I'll pick it up from 3 levels. First is policy level, second is program level, and third is advocacy level. So on the policy level, in the African Union and across Africa, we have a very rich document called the Africa Agenda 2063, as we all know, that talks about a prosperous Africa in harmony and peace with itself. Mm-hmm. So the thing to do now is to see how we can localize that 50 years vision in harmony with our national development plan and making sure that we mainstream culture of peace, tolerance, and non-violence in our national development plan. That's number one practical way. And then number two, we in the youth movement, in the peace movement, we must not take it and then transport it by making sure we come up with activities that are community owned and locally led so that communities can be able to take ownership, you see? So we have to come up with peace initiative at the local level. And I'll give a concrete example. During the war in the northern part of Ethiopia, we went in with a very important project. And the idea was not to join the big organizations that was doing humanitarian work. What we did was we decided to mobilize the local NGOs. And the strategy was we were looking at post-conflict, reconstruction, rebuilding. And long story short, we came up with a 2 years project that will look into supporting rebuilding and reconstruction, but mainstreaming the issues of culture of peace, reconciliation, and also interreligious harmony. See? So that is two, taking the causes and actions of peace down to the grassroots and the front line. And then secondly, when it comes to programmatic issues, we at the African Artists Peace Initiative, we're launching a decade-long program in harmony with the African Union Silencing the Guns campaign. As you know, African Union has launched this campaign to silence all guns in Africa, but as you know, no guns have been silenced yet. So as civil society—
They have instead increased.
You know very well from the— So as civil society and as a movement in 33 African countries with over 15,000 members, we're launching 5 initiatives. One is using culture for peace. 2 is media for peace. We all know about the fake news and misinformation going on in Africa, and that's contributed to insecurity. 3 would be education for peace. We need to mainstream peace in our education curriculum, see, from high school to university, and then make sure indigenous knowledge is mainstream. And then number 4 is sports for peace. We all know how sports is euphoric in Africa. We could be able to use it as a tool, in terms of reintegrating ex-combatant, but also talking about peace. And then finally, interfaith harmony. Africans are religious people in general, see? So we can use, religion in order to champion the culture of peace. And then finally, when it comes to issues of advocacy, we as peace activists and also as, using arts and different mediums to champion peace and young people, we must first of all communicate with each other. We must organize for peace, and then we must partner for peace. This is what is lacking. Communicate, organize, and partner for peace.
Okay, very good. Organizing, and I have a lot of questions, but I want to open it up for the audience, and I will hand back the mic to Osman, who's a moderator, to take up the audience questions and moderate them. So, Osman?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So if people have questions in the chat or just want to ask questions straight away, no, you go ahead.
Okay. I would like to thank our panelists, Ibrahim. Thank you so much for this brilliant presentation. I've learned a lot from this presentation, and one more time, thank you. Now, the questions we have here are actually directed to our first panelist, okay? So he's not around, I guess. So let us just, do you have any questions? Can you raise your hands if you have any questions to Ibrahim, for example? Let me see. So Ibrahim is not, so do you have, you can raise your hand if you have any questions for Ibrahim before we get our first panelist, because he's not around. I can't see him from the, so Andrew, are you with us? Andrew, are you with us? Can you hear us? So Andrew is not here. So do you have any questions for Ibrahim? So I'm going to ask him this question, Ibrahim. Do you hear me? You have said that the culture of peace is very, very important, culture and mindset, right? For instance, I'm from the Republic of Benin, and since I was born, we didn't have any serious conflict or civil war, let's say, in Benin. So here is what I, when I was growing, that's what we always talked about. We don't look at our differences. We always look at what we have in common. Okay, so for example, we talked about our common interests, what we can do for the country, things like that. So do you think that this could be, I mean, this experience of Benin Republic, could it be replicated to other African countries instead of talking about our own differences? We can talk about what we have in common and forget about our differences. What do you think? What is your take on this, Ibrahim?
Thank you very much for those excellent questions. And I also want to thank the previous speakers for their contribution. So let me start by saying that, let me start by congratulating Benin Republic of a beautiful country, Cotonou.
Ibrahim, are you with us? We can't hear you anymore. Ibrahim, are you with us?
Our identity, you see, and I've been following the situation there now. So I think what is happening in Benin could be replicated. It could be first be conceptualized, packaged, and replicated as a pilot project to other countries, because we've seen the impact of how talking to each other, sharing our cultural ideologies, and concepts can be able to draw us nearer and see our commonalities rather than what separates us. Yeah? But the challenge has always been, and I know some people have raised that issue, is that we do not normally look at the relevance of our cultural renaissance, and then we've lost our culture to Western, ideologies. And then you see how we dress, how we talk, we want to go outside and study. So there needs to be an entire cultural renaissance. And that brings me to the African Union. They have a cultural renaissance charter. And I want to say it's very sad. This charter has been adopted in 2016, but to date, only 16 African countries have ratified this charter out of 55 countries. You see? So they've ratified other charters on peace, on democracy, but on culture, which is what we can hold on to, and one of the accelerating means to achieving the Africa that we want. We Africans don't really care about that. So reset of mindset, again, is very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the answer. This is true, actually. You've said that if this could be replicated in other African countries, but of course it has to be in a form of package, which is completely true. I agree with what he's saying. So let me just go back to the audience. Do you have any questions for Ibrahim before we get Andrew? Andrew, are you with us? There are a couple of questions for you. After your presentation, 2 or 3 people asked some questions. I also have some questions for you, but we can't still get Andrew. He's not back. So do you have any questions for Ibrahim before we get to Andrew? Any questions for Ibrahim? You can raise your hand if you have any questions.
Hello.
Hi, this is Mpo.
Yes, you're speaking to Mpo from South Africa, and I have a question for our speaker, Ibrahim. With regards to internal factors that lead to insecurity in Africa, right? I think something like, corruption can be looked at as an internal factor, but I feel like some factors, even though they seem internal, they come from external factors and the external influence that we are, overwhelmed with as Africans by the West, So I just wanted to kind of ask what, the speaker's take is on this, what they can say about, our current dynamics of politics and how this runs as one of the main factors to insecurities that we have in Africa, and how it might be, connected to, external influences. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
So Ibrahim, are you with us? Have you heard the question?
Yes, I got a question. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So what I would say on that would be thank you very much, dear, for that excellent question.
So Ibrahim, before you continue, just you can actually follow up, with the second question. That this question is saying, how can young people contribute in building peace in my country, Burkina Faso? So after you finish answering Mpo's question, you can continue with the next question.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. So I just want to say that one of the main issues we have right now in Africa is that young people are unemployed. See, so the issues of youth unemployability has been one of the internal factors that my sister has been mentioning. External powers, external influences have used that as an entry point to destabilize, African nations. And it's rather unfortunate because our government in 2016, agreed to reduce youth unemployment in Africa every year by 2%. It is popularly known as the Malabo Declaration of the African Union. Where you see from 2016 to date, youth unemployment in Africa has been on the increase. And in specific, I'll give an example. Youth unemployment in South Africa is up to 42%. That is a huge number, and that is one of the reasons that is leading to xenophobia and other attacks in South Africa. So therefore, African governments and young people must work together with the private sector in creating jobs for young people in the informal sector. Not everybody can put on a suit and a tie and go to the office. Young people must also look at, going to fisheries, the green economy, and the blue economy. So that is one way of reversing the threat of insecurity and also making sure that external influence, does not influence our national policies. And then the role of young people. Burkina Faso is going through a lot of transition. We've been following the process for years. And I think one concrete way the young people of Burkina Faso can contribute to peace building is by building a movement for peace. Because we saw what happened during the revolution. It's just a matter of flipping the idea, backwards, building for peace, and then making sure that young people, the media, the creative communities, religious leaders, and traditional leaders come up with a peace forum. And then they will be able to, engage the different parties. In that way, there will be, a concrete example of partnership for peace. And secondly, there must be intergenerational dialogue in Burkina Faso between young people and then the elderly, because we are so far away from getting wisdom from the elderly. That is the reason why most of us are very naive as young people. So we must talk to the elders more, listen to them, and they have great wisdom they can share with us, and that is the better way we can be able to build an Africa fit for all of us. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much, Ibrahim, for the answer. It was very clear and straightforward. You're right. What you're saying is completely correct. And unemployment is a big issue in Africa. That's true. Do you have any other questions, the audience? So if you have any other questions, just raise your hands or you can turn on your microphone and ask a question.
Henry.
So let's see, maybe Andrew is coming, I don't know. Andrew, are you with us? Can you hear us?
I need you.
Andrew, are you with us? So let's move on to this question. This question is saying, thank you for elaborate presentation on strategic peace and security in Africa or around the world. Kindly help me understand the role of young people in achieving the strategic peace and security in Africa, given our leaders discriminate, given how our leaders discriminate the youth employment. So here, this person is talking about Discrimination. Okay. So Ibrahim, did you understand the question? Why do you think youth, or let's say young people, are discriminated in Africa? So that's the question. Now, before you answer, let's go back to Andrew. Andrew, welcome back. We've been waiting for you.
Yes, I'm sorry, I have got an emergency. I had to leave.
I understand that. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions for you. So during your presentation, you talked about Islamic extremism, right?
Yes.
Very good. So my question for you is that where do you think those people are getting the money? Because if they don't have finance, then they won't be able to, attack people. So that's the first question I have for you. The next question is about conflict of interest. How can we properly deal with this conflict of interest? For example, you mentioned Uganda, which you said is very successful, in security matters because it is mostly localized. So what are some of the experiences of Uganda in this time? Do you have some credible, tangible example, real lifetime example of, Uganda's success in this matter? The other question is asking about, let me just find it out because you left, so I couldn't, it's just, yeah. This question is saying, it's saying here, working in peace building organization. I have noticed that working in a peace and security areas is not easy in Africa. How can the youth and NGOs influence, in this area? So what can we do to, encourage or to motivate youth to participate in peace building and security, security or peace promotion, let's say? So these are some of the questions we have for you.
Let me begin with the last question first. I think that African youth will be more productive in promotion of peace if their efforts and ideas on peace are rooted in their communities, not rooted in the textbook. In fact, I believe they will be more productive for us if they are not picking solutions from textbooks, and if they are less funded by international interests who try to impose textbook solutions on reality. That's one. The second last question you asked me, sorry, now I forget, I do not write the second last question you asked.
Yeah, it was about terrorism.
What is the evidence that Uganda has achieved peace?
Yeah.
Remember that Uganda, since Museveni came to government, he has fought 22 rebel groups in each and every region of the country. And his strategy has been to defeat the rebels militarily, but after he has defeated them militarily, he has never declared victory. What he has done is then bring them on a political roundtable and negotiate a peace with them where their combatants would be integrated into the Ugandan army and their leaders would be given official positions in the government. So he has not taken a holier than thou position to say, for you, you are LRA, you are a killer, we will not deal with you, we'll take you to jail and we'll prosecute you in courts. In fact, Uganda has avoided criminal prosecution. Uganda has placed political reconciliation above criminal prosecution. And I think one of the reasons why we have been able to secure peace in Uganda is that. And another evidence, of course, is that right now Uganda internally is secure, and that is why we have our troops in Congo, we are trying to help South Sudan, we are helping Somalia, simply because there are no insurgencies at home. If there was insurgency here, it would not be easy for us to be conducting military operations abroad. And what was your first question?
Yeah, it was about Islamic extremism that you mentioned.
Yes. What about Islamic extremism?
Yeah, the question was, where are they getting the money?
Remember. Yes, where do they get the money? First of all, I should tell you that the most powerful resource for a rebel movement is not money, it is conviction. And Islamic extremists have a powerful ideology. We are fighting for Allah. There is no amount of money that can sustain a movement as powerfully as an ideology that we're fighting for God. I do not know any other ideology that can be so powerful. I think that Islamic extremism, therefore, more than money, it is this fanatical conviction that they're in the service of God, of Allah, that is their driving, that is the fuel that sustains the movement.
I understand.
Money is just an icing on the cake.
Okay, I understand that. Very well said. I clearly understood that. I didn't know about this before, but thank you for the clarification. The last question for you is saying, You talked about the mismatch in terms of resources and expectation of citizens has an impediment to bring long-lasting peace in most African countries. This person is asking, I would like to know what must citizens do to influence the processes of peace building beside the challenge mentioned above?
That's a difficult question. That's a difficult question. I think that I would love to see our citizens engaged in the political process, first by appreciating our reality and as much as possible connecting to the local population, not with idealistic, what can I call them, that are not rooted in reality, but relying on what is possible, looking at what are our possibilities. Don't impose a Belgium solution on Uganda or on Ghana or on Benin. If I was a citizen of Benin, what are the possibilities available in Benin for us? And how do we then craft these as the solution? If I was to tell you, I get, Amadou, I get so frustrated because I feel like we argue about our countries as if they are Belgium or France. We are not France, we are not Belgium. We have specific realities that we must deal with directly. And those realities have serious constraints on what our leaders can do. And by the way, another thing I would like to say is that I would be happy if every African woke up and said, what can I do for my country? Every day we say, what can my country do for me? What can the state of Uganda? You know, Kennedy at his inauguration said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask for what you can do for your country. I wish Ugandans, Kenyans, Tanzanians, Zambians had the same attitude. Many young people in Uganda believe that somehow their situation should be decided by the government. If you come to my country, Uganda, you'll be surprised. There are very many immigrants who come from Ethiopia, from Eritrea, from Somalia, who are so rich and they're employing Ugandans. We have people coming from Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India. They're so rich in our country. And for you are saying your government has blocked opportunities for you. But how come these migrants, without any form of political connection, are able to come into our country and make a fortune? We have Chinese on every arm and leg of our existence creating a fortune. So, second thing, we need to change the mindset of our youth. They need to believe that they are responsible for their lives, that their destiny is theirs to shape, not the government to shape their destiny. That they should not sit on their arms and begin asking that the government should do for me this and that. They should ask, what can I do for myself and what can I do for my government? And if they get that kind of mindset, it will open the opportunities. The final one I should tell you, when I move around Uganda, the richest Ugandans are those who are least educated. Did you know that? The most educated Ugandans have this mindset that because they have a university degree, then they're entitled to a well-paying job. But the Ugandans who are not educated know that the paper qualifications that are necessary to work in the government, to work in the banks, to work in telecom companies, they don't have them. So they go and employ their wits on the streets, and they have become the most successful Ugandans I know. So you ask me the solution, the other solution is change your mindset.
That's very well said, actually. Very well said. Thank you so much for this contribution. So the other question goes to Ibrahim. It's saying here, thank you, let's say, Ibrahim, for elaborate presentation on strategic peace and security in Africa or around the world. Kindly help me understand the role of young people in achieving the strategic peace and security in Africa, given how our leaders discriminate the youth in unemployment or employment, let's say.
Thank you very much. Let me thank Mr. Andrew for his very explicit answers. Thank you very much, Mr. Andrew. I think we're in alignment when it comes to the issue of reset of mindset. I think that is the key. That is the bottom line, because when the mind and the heart are aligned and are conscious, then we can be able to take affirmative decisions. So in answering the question, I want to say that in Africa is the only continent that has an African Youth Charter. So the charter was passed in 2006. So this charter basically enshrines the rights and responsibilities of young people. And then Article 17 of that charter talks about the rights of young people in Africa when it comes to issues of peace building. You see? So I would say the first thing to do is to pick it up from that level, policy level, because almost all governments in Africa have signed that charter. So when you take that charter up, backed with the national youth policies of our various African countries, that could be the entry point for now designing an advocacy strategy, you see? Because if you want to talk to government, you want to engage partners, the message must be clear, and then you must know your stuff. If not, you go to them and then they ask you questions you cannot answer. So we must organize for peace as young people at the national level. And then finally, the same charter, the African Youth Charter, Article 11 talks about the participation of young people in politics. The easiest way and one of the most affirmative way to influence policies at the national level in favor of young people is for young people themselves to go into politics. I mean, why are we shying away from politics? Let's get into politics, engage and change dynamics.
Absolutely, Mr. Ibrahim. I completely agree with what he's saying. So we will give you this last question, but after you finish answering the question, you can, say your final thoughts before we wrap up this wonderful webinar. So the question is, this Al-Haji is saying that my question is, do you think external grants and fundings from the West actually has an external influence on our decision-making leading to security threats? I think Andrew has already talked about this, but maybe you can add something on that. And
yeah, of course, I do. I do agree that it does have some influences. For example, the African Union budget, 75% of their program budget is funded by the European Union. So I will just leave that for us to do the mathematics. But we know. But so in conclusion, I want to say peace is possible. Peace is very possible in Africa. And the three things we must do is to be CEOs of peace in Africa. And I'm not referring to chief executive officers. The C stands again for communication. We must take these big jargons. For example, what do we call peace or culture of peace or security in our African languages? You see, when majority of people in Africa live in rural parts of Africa. So we must be able to use our indigenous languages in talking about the issues of peace. So communication, social media, and everything. And then the E is engagement. We must engage even with those that are causing violence. We must talk to them. They're our brothers, or they're our sisters. We must talk to them because perhaps we could appeal to them emotionally. And then the O is organization. We must organize. And I leave you with this word from Martin Luther King that says, those who love peace must learn to organize as those who love violence and war. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. I can't thank you enough. I'm feeling like I'm a different person now after your presentation. I've learned a lot from your brilliant presentation. So, Mr. Andrew, what's your final thoughts on this?
Well, in the last presentation, I think I made my final. Let me conclude it this way: that two things we need. One, Africa needs to develop an idea that it can solve its problems by itself. That's the most important thing. Everywhere we turn, whatever we want to do, we think that somebody outside will come and help us. Look, every African president is running around looking for foreign investors, even though we know there is no country in the world. If you know it, guys, come and tell me that has been developed by foreign direct investment. It doesn't exist. So we need to believe in ourselves that A, the political institutions that we build must be homegrown. B, that our citizens should be the most important drivers of our economies, not foreign investors. 3, that the solutions for our problems, whether it's for peace, for politics, they must be homegrown. That our reality is the most important resource from which we can generate the capabilities to solve our problems.
Thank you so much, Mr. Andrew. Really. Now I'm going to, give back the floor to our president and founder to listen to his final thought before we wrap up and leave.
I think I don't have much of the thoughts. Much of the thoughts have been really framed and given by our dear panelists. Just a vote of thanks to Mr. Andrew, Mr. Ibrahim, thank you very much. Like all of the panelists have said, peace should be homegrown, not foreign. Just think about yourself as a person. Do you really need to consult Andrew to show you how to live peacefully? You know yourself, you know your emotions, you know your temperament, you know your needs. So as governments, as young people, as a society, let's construct that idea of resource management. We usually say that it should be your own raw material. You know, a raw material, you can transform it into a finished good. Likewise to yourself, you can transform yourself to any finished good, but the finished good must be good, not bad. And as Africa, you know, there are these, you know, Western parameters of peace. There's something called negative peace and positive peace. Now, they use that as a measurement in countries. Negative peace is the absence of violence. Positive peace is, you know, more luxurious, like you have more economic welfare, human development. But they go tell those things in South Sudan, where they have no even absence of violence, that you must implement this welfare. Come on, it's just a matter of common sense and common understanding. Let's really construct peace from our indigenous. I like Ibrahim saying that let's turn the word peace in our indigenous languages and be on the right track. But I'll tell you, the biggest prevention of insecurity is equal distribution of resources. Why people fight, tensions, even tribalism, ethnicities, tensions, they're all due to unequal distribution of peace. Who do you think that only your tribe will take 95% shares? These guys also have needs, have wants. So let's equally distribute resources to a politician, to a social worker, to a young person. How do you treat the other people on the other side of life? So equal distribution of resources is a key parameter to secure our peace. And as Africans, young Africans, we need to know all these things from the beginning. And that's why the cultivation of mindset is paramount. So I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, to our wonderful panelists. Thank you very much. You have enlightened more about our topic, but also planting noble seeds in the mindset of our young people, which is very, very noble. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a very good day.
Too, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.